Personal finance expert Sharon Kedar joins us live in studio this morning with tips on making sure back to school doesn't put you in the poorhouse. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This is a good time for a math lesson before they even head into the math classroom, huh?
Absolutely. So with kids, it's really doing them a favor by having a budget and talking about needs versus wants and not giving your kids everything that they want. Is actually doing them a huge favor. Okay. And that's empowering for parents.
And they would disagree. They would
disagree, but as you know, as we're both parents, we're not always there to be friends with the kid.
Yeah.
It's good to be parent first, and teaching financial lessons is important.
Now, a lot of parents have been looking at these lists getting longer. Maybe they have more than one kid. So first of all, where's the best place to cut?
Yeah, so really there's three things when you think about back to school shopping. First of all, really think about what you need. So when you get that back to school list, say, okay, what do I really need? Are there things I can save money on, maybe reuse a backpack? Are there things that I actually have in the house? And then set a budget and talk to your kids about that budget. And when you actually go out, stick to that budget. So when your kid comes up and says, I really want this, and it's 20 bucks more than you thought you were going to spend, it's okay to say no. And again, it's actually doing them a favor.
Well, and it's hard to get them to understand, though, when their friends have all the latest iPods, the latest gadgets. So how do you teach them? Can you do it through giving them an allowance, or what's the best way?
So there's a few things, Chris. So first of all, yeah, so an allowance works very well. So for instance, for a teenager going back to school, giving them a set allowance in terms of clothing, that's important, and empowering to them to say, okay, for instance, you have $150 that you can spend on clothes for this upcoming season, and letting them choose. Another thing that's important for kids is to actually be involved in the family's finances. So we have a major financial literacy in this country, and part of it is we don't talk about it. So it's amazing if you think about it. We'll talk about things in high school like sex education, but we don't teach personal finance. And communication is at school and at home. So talking about it is really important. And finally, letting kids know that, if you see someone else who has some fancy gadget, their parents might not necessarily have their finances together. And unfortunately, the odds are 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They probably don't.
Well, then, so how do you get the kids involved in the family's, budget and household spending without getting them really stressed out? I mean, a lot of parents go, oh my, I'm going to have to, steal from Peter to pay Paul.
Sure. Well, having them involved in the budget and knowing how much you can spend on things like food, how much you can spend on things like entertainment and fun is actually empowering. So once you actually get involved with that, it's not a source of stress, it can be a source of empowerment. I think that's what a lot of folks who, actually 40% of Americans have tried to live on a budget. Most don't because they think it's stressful, but it can be empowering. It doesn't have to be a financial straitjacket.
Okay, so we live in the Bay Area, which is obviously one of the most expensive places to live in the country.
Yes.
Is it easier to save in other places, or do you think that we can do ourselves justice by trying to save here as well?
The answer is both. So no doubt it's easier to save in places where housing prices aren't where they are today. But I'll tell you this, Chris, we know people who save money on $30,000 a year, and we know people who don't save on $300,000 a year. So it's really all about a commitment. And budgeting can keep it simple. Personal finance can keep it simple. And that's actually why we wrote our book On My Own 2 Feet, because what I'd like to tell the folks out there is finance does not have to be difficult. With commitment, you can do it.
And girls can do it too, which is why the book is called On My Own 2 Feet, A Modern Girl's Guide to Personal Finance. I think a lot of young women are intimidated. They think that perhaps, somebody else should take care of the finance.
That's right. And the message we want to give to those women is, and sorry to pick on the men, but Prince Charming doesn't have a clue about money most often, even though he acts like he does. And so that's really important. A big part of personal finance is saving, investing, but also protecting yourself.
So maybe the girls will school the boys, right?
Heck yeah. That's what we'd love.
Oh.
Why not?
Well, thank you so much. If you want to see more of her book, and we have some of it on our website, NBC11.com. We'll put it up later today. Just look under featured links. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Good advice.
Thank you.
Advice.